It is time to talk to Quentin Brogdon. He is an attorney, a legal expert about a few things. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the program, while I was off last week, I was kind of like my news mode was turned off. I didn't want to know anything about politics, about news. Like I was focusing on my daughter's birthday and that's it. Except when I heard of one thing, and that was President Biden issuing vaccine mandates on employers with over 100 employees. And I thought to myself, hold on a second. Didn't President Biden a few months ago or even last year say that he wasn't going to mandate vaccines? Jen Psaki had said it previously. It wasn't the federal government's job to do it. But yet here we were last week with Biden saying he was going to mandate vaccines. Joining me on 710 KURV is Quentin Brogdon, an attorney. Quentin, thank you so much for joining me. Now, let's just get the first question out of the way, which is this constitutional? Can the president mandate vaccines?
Good afternoon, Roxanne. We're in an emergency situation and our legal system is being tested like never before. Wow. There is an old United States Supreme Court case from 1905 where the state of Massachusetts, the court held, could require smallpox vaccinations. Here, what President Biden has mandated, and some would say it was done very specifically in order to aid, decrease the chances that it will pass constitutional and other legal muster. It's not a vaccine mandate per se, and necessarily it is a mandate that certain companies over certain sizes, the employees must get vaccinated or get tested weekly. And the get tested weekly aspect of it may be what in fact gets the mandate saved. Having said that, it no doubt is going to be subject to legal challenge, and the survival of Biden's mandate is not assured. Nobody can tell you necessarily the challenges will not succeed. There is a very real chance they will succeed in whole or in part.
Wow, I just cannot believe, Quentin, that we're still here. Like, I just remembered throughout the over a year and a half that we've been talking about COVID-19, and you as a legal expert, I know you deal with this stuff every single day and, with different clients and stories and all that stuff. And I just honestly never thought that we would be where we're at now in the sense of the president issuing these either mandates or just telling private businesses what they can and cannot do. I had honestly thought that, well, once the vaccine comes out, we'll be okay. We'll go back to normal. What is normal now, right? So like you just mentioned, this is something that will definitely be seen in court, and we'll get there when we get there. But one thing I also wanted to ask you, Quentin, is if a employee refuses to get the COVID-19 vaccine, so let me back up. Biden issues that mandate. Employers now have to mandate the vaccine on their employees if they have over 100 employees. An employee decides, you know what, not going to do it. I'm not going to get the vaccine. And maybe I'll get tested every week. But if they just continue to refuse to get the vaccine, can employees that do that, can they get unemployment benefits if they get fired or let go because of them refusing to get the vaccine?
That's a great question, Roxanne. And Texas specifically has a requirement for unemployment benefits that the employee be out of work. General requirement is the employee be out of work through no fault on the part of the employee. So if an employee is let go because of, a reduction in force, for instance, or something like that, that's no fault of the employee. Generally, that employee can collect unemployment benefits. On the other hand, if an employee is let go, fired, because there's no good cause, for the employee refusing a direction, for instance, from the employer. It's not illegal, it's not improper, but the employee just says, I'm not going to do it. And the employer fires that employee, then that can be a circumstance where the employee cannot receive and cannot recover unemployment benefits. And so the question is refusing to get vaccinated for COVID, would that be good cause to be terminated or not by the employer? And I think it will depend, most legal commentators think, on the specific circumstances. If I'm an employee and I have a good faith, religious issue or a religious objection to it, sincerely held religious belief, or if I have a disability that makes me more prone to the adverse side effects of the vaccine, that may potentially constitute good cause for me to say, no, I am not going to be vaccinated, and I may still, if I'm fired, be able to recover unemployment benefits, potentially. As I said, these things are still getting worked out. There's no black and white definitive answer for anybody here, but there would at least be an argument, I and others think, if an employee had a good faith, sincerely held religious belief, or there was a disability.
So that would be pretty much the only two options that someone would have for them to not get the vaccine and maybe either be let go because of that, and then they would have the opportunity to get an employment. So if I understood you correctly, Quentin, if I choose, for example, I work for Radio United and I still have not gotten the vaccine, if they tell me, Roxy, you got to get it or else, ... and I choose the or else, then I cannot go to the unemployment benefit office and say, hey, I got let go, where's my money? No, because I chose to not get it, correct?
Well, and I can't, and I don't want to sound too much like a lawyer, I can't give general legal advice that would apply to everybody. What I can say is many commentators would have a concern about whether you could recover unemployment benefits if you didn't have a sincerely held religious belief that prevented vaccination or some kind of disability. The other thing that I neglected to mention is maybe you're a member of a union and there's a contract between the union and the employer that prohibits requiring a vaccine, or there's a written employment contract that you have that prohibits. Maybe it specifically mentions vaccines, or it says something that would cover vaccines and prohibits it. You might be able to use those written, they're basically contracts, the union contract or your employment contract. If those existed, you might be able to use those in some way in an argument to recover your unemployment benefits, even if you did not have a sincerely held religious belief about vaccines or a pre-existing disability. So, as I said, there aren't black and white answers, but I think you'd have some arguments to make, at least, in those circumstances.
I can only imagine how stressed y'all are, as in you guys, you attorneys that have to deal with this and really get down to the bottom of it and figure out and see if there are either black and white answers or if there is, if it's a case by case basis and all that stuff. I'm pretty sure y'all are just stressed out because this is new for everyone. And who would have thought that y'all would have to be dealing with mandates and vaccines and all this stuff, even last year. Let me reintroduce you. Joining me on 710 KURV is Quentin Brogdon. He is a legal expert attorney. Let's see, you have a long list. Your intro, you are the Invitation Only International Academy of Trial Lawyers, a fellow in the Invitation Only American College of Trial Lawyers, and a fellow in the Invitation Only International Society of Barristers. So you are just, you know a lot about, obviously, law. Before we go, Quentin, I wanted to ask you, if an employer decides to not follow the mandate, will they face consequences, or is there something legal there that they can do to maybe if the employer chooses to not follow the mandate?
Well, in the mandate itself, President Biden specified fines and different penalties that would occur if an employer attempts to, disregard it and it applies. Having said that, there most definitely will be, and there already are in process, legal challenges to the mandate. So it is not yet a settled matter, but I think it's put employers in a very difficult situation. This whole pandemic has all along, because no matter what employers did, even before President Biden took this step, they were going to upset some of their customers and some of their employees, regardless of whether they went for mandates for vaccines or they made it optional. Anything they did and do as employers is going to upset some and make others happy. So they're just sort of by definition. So it puts employers in a very difficult situation.
I'm just thinking about how would the administration or whoever is in charge, how would they follow up with this mandate? How would they know if a company or an employer chooses to implement this law? Because I'm pretty sure there are a lot of companies that are like, nah, we're going to say we're going to do it, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, but you don't really have to.
Well, you raised a good point, Roxanne, but just like workplaces are regulated through OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, there are regulations, and oftentimes, in fact, in cases that I handle where people die at work from unsafe conditions and the OSHA regulations were violated, maybe the federal government didn't know as it was happening, but after something occurs, they came in and audited later, just like, your listeners, have an obligation to pay federal income tax. Well, some people ignore that, and they're not caught for years on end. And then one day they're caught, and they have lots of fines and penalties, and then it's enforced. So you're right, there is no perfect enforcement mechanism, but there is now a requirement that's been issued, and in companies who violate it and that violate it are risking at least these fines.
Well, Quentin, I certainly have more questions, so hopefully I'll get to have you on the show again when it comes to all these mandates and mask mandates, vaccine mandates. I don't even know where we're at with the state of Texas and Texas versus all these school districts, but that'll be for another time, Quentin. Thank you so much for joining me today. That is Quentin Brogdon, a legal expert, my guest on 710 KURV.